Kaziranga National Park, late afternoon. Anil found the elephant lying motionless at the edge of a small clearing, its enormous frame stretched awkwardly across the dry earth. The giant's usual slow, steady breathing was faint, almost imperceptible, barely stirring the dust at its sides. Anil's chest tightened the moment his eyes settled on the stillness. In the wild, the sight of a solitary elephant lying down and not rising was cause for deep concern. The animal's survival depended on strength and mobility, especially at night when dangers multiplied. Alone and vulnerable, it faced a precarious battle with dehydration, exhaustion, and the threat of predators drawn by the scent of weakness. Anil's presence here was no accident. As a seasoned ranger, he had come to recognize the subtle signs that whispered of life hanging by a thread. Now, under the lengthening shadows of the late afternoon sun, his task was clear but delicate. Watch, wait, and prepare for the night ahead. The elephant's skin was mottled with dirt and dust, a patchwork canvas of mud where it had presumably tried to cool its weary body. Its ears twitched only occasionally, weak flickers that hinted at fading alertness. Its trunk rested limp on the ground, unmoving save for a shallow rise and fall that marked fragile breaths. The eyes, half-lidded and glazed, reflected a deep exhaustion. Anil knew that elephants rarely lay down for long periods unless forced by illness or injury. Their survival in the wild depended on vigilance and strength. Rest came but with caution and always surrounded by the safety of the herd. This elephant was alone. The protective circle of family and companions was nowhere to be seen, leaving it exposed. The risk was plain and immediate. If it failed to rise soon, the dry heat of the day and the cold night to come would sap its strength irreversibly. Carefully, Anil approached, his steps slow and measured to avoid startling the animal. He had learned through years in the park that a calm, non-threatening presence could sometimes be the difference between an animal's trust and flight, between life and death. The clearing was silent except for the soft whisper of the breeze brushing through dry grass and the occasional distant call of birds settling for the evening. The air smelled faintly of earth and leaf mold, mingled with the faint, sharp scent of the nearby river that shimmered beyond the trees. Everything about this quiet scene felt fragile, as if the world was holding its breath alongside the elephant. Anil knelt a respectful distance away, studying the creature's posture. The legs were tucked awkwardly beneath the massive body, and the head rested low, unable or unwilling to lift. Yet beneath that stillness, there was a trace of life, the chest's faint, uneven rhythm a reminder that the elephant had not yet surrendered. Anil's mind ran through the stakes. If the elephant remained down through the night without assistance or change, dehydration and physical weakness could turn fatal. Vulnerability to predators was heightened in this state. Lions or hyenas, always alert to weakness, might be drawn by the smell of an incapacitated animal. Yet, at the same time, any sudden movement or attempt to force the elephant to rise risked causing panic or injury. The balance was delicate, to observe without pressure, to be present without intrusion. Anil placed a small container of water nearby, along with some freshly gathered leaves, hoping the subtle offering might encourage the elephant to drink or eat when it was ready. He whispered softly, "It's okay, girl," a phrase born of quiet compassion rather than expectation. The elephant's ears flicked once in response, but no further movement came. It lay there, watching Anil with eyes clouded by fatigue and pain, indifferent yet not entirely detached. Its trunk twitched lightly as if sensing the human presence but lacked the strength or will to reach out. The tension in the air was palpable, a mix of hope and despair woven together in the long, fading light. Anil settled down nearby, making himself small and steady against the earth. The night ahead would be long, and his role was to keep vigil. If the elephant stirred, he would be ready to offer support. If predators approached, he would intervene. The risks were real and immediate, but so too was the quiet determination to stand guard. As the sun dipped lower, the clearing grew cooler and the shadows lengthened. The forest around seemed to slow, as if respecting the gravity of the moment. The elephant's breathing, though shallow, grew marginally steadier. The faint pulse beneath its skin suggested life, fragile but present. Anil's gaze never left the animal. In this silent companionship, an unspoken bond formed, a shared endurance through uncertainty. The wild had claimed its space here, but the presence of a human guardian lent a fragile thread of hope. The elephant's fate remained uncertain. If it could not regain strength, it risked succumbing to the unforgiving forces of nature. But if it could hold on, if this night passed without catastrophe, survival might still be within reach. The sounds of the forest shifted into the quiet rhythms of nightfall, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of small animals in underbrush, and the sigh of wind through the trees. Above, the moon rose pale and steady, casting a silver glow that traced the contours of the elephant's resting body. Anil remained motionless, breathing slowly, grounded in the present moment. There was no room for haste or desperation here. Every second counted, measured in shallow breaths and soft flickers of movement. The night demanded watchfulness and patience, a steadfast presence to witness the fragile dance of life on the edge. In that quiet vigil, the urgency was tempered by reverence. Anil knew the elephant was not merely a creature to be saved, but a life to be honored. The vast wilderness carried stories of survival and loss, but also moments like this, moments where human kindness met wild fragility without fanfare or spectacle. The outcome was still unwritten, balanced on the thin line between dusk and dawn. For now, the elephant lay silent, and Anil sat beside it, a guardian in the fading light, holding hope as softly as the night held its breath. Kaziranga National Park, nightfall. As the sun slipped beyond the horizon, the world softened into shades of deep blue and muted gray. Anil settled carefully beside the elephant, placing himself near but never too close, respecting the fragile boundary between human and wild. The air grew cooler, carrying with it the faint scent of damp earth and distant water. Night in the park was alive with sounds, soft rustlings, distant calls, but here, in this clearing, a profound quiet held sway, punctuated only by the elephant's slow, uneven breaths. Anil's eyes remained fixed on the massive creature's chest, rising and falling like a gentle wave, a fragile pulse of life. It was a small but powerful reassurance, a reminder that though weakness clung heavily, the elephant was still present, still fighting. The elephant's body barely stirred, limbs tucked beneath it with exhaustion, yet there was a subtle, almost imperceptible twitch in the tip of its trunk. Its ears shifted occasionally, faint movements like whispered responses to the cool night breeze. These small signs became Anil's focus, each one a fragile thread of hope weaving through the quiet tension. Despite the stillness, the elephant was not completely surrendered. The faint call it emitted, a soft, low rumble, was a sound of distress, perhaps, but also of connection, a subtle reach into the darkness that Anil answered with calm presence. He whispered gently, "You're almost there," his voice barely more than a breath, a tender acknowledgement of the animal's struggle and strength. Anil's vigil was a careful balance between watchfulness and stillness. He remained motionless for long stretches, feeling the night's cool embrace settle over the clearing. His breath synchronized with the elephant's fragile rhythm, his heartbeat steady and slow. Around them, the forest hummed with life, an owl's distant hoot, the rustle of small mammals, the whisper of leaves. But within this small circle, time seemed to suspend itself, holding space for something profound. The elephant's gaze, heavy and unfocused, occasionally flicked toward Anil, hinting at awareness but shadowed by fatigue. There was no fear, only the quiet acceptance of presence, a shared moment between two beings bound by circumstance and care. As darkness deepened, Anil considered the risks pressing close. The elephant's immobility left it vulnerable to dehydration and the cold night air, its strength sapping with every slow breath. Predators might be drawn to the scent of weakness. Lions and hyenas, always alert for opportunity, could approach under cover of night. Yet the elephant's fragile signs of life suggested a sliver of hope, a chance to endure until dawn. Anil's role was clear: to keep watch, to offer a steady, calming presence that might help stave off panic or further injury. The stakes were stark. If the elephant's strength waned, if it failed to rise by morning, survival would slip beyond reach. The clearing was dotted with soft shadows as moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting silver patterns on the elephant's weathered skin. Anil placed a small dish of water and a handful of fresh leaves nearby, careful not to startle. The elephant's trunk twitched toward the offerings but retreated, the effort too great for its weary limbs. Still, these small gestures mattered, an invitation, a lifeline extended quietly in the night. The elephant's breathing shifted slightly as it turned its head, nostrils flaring, sensing but not yet responding. Anil's presence was gentle, never forceful. A silent conversation was carried in shared space rather than words. Throughout the long hours, the elephant remained a picture of quiet resilience. Its body, though heavy with exhaustion, showed subtle attempts to adjust position, a faint lift of a leg here, a slow shift of weight there. Each movement was a small victory, an assertion of life clinging to endurance. Anil's watchful eyes noted these with careful relief, each sign a soft promise that the creature was not yet lost to the night. The rhythmic sounds of the forest framed the vigil, from the soft rustle of leaves to the distant call of night birds. The atmosphere was one of patient waiting, a shared journey through uncertainty where the fragile thread of hope was carefully tended. Anil whispered again, voice low and steady, "It's okay, girl." The words were a balm, a quiet offer of companionship in a moment when loneliness could overwhelm. The elephant's ears flicked faintly in response, and its trunk moved slightly as if reaching for reassurance. There was no grand gesture, no dramatic shift, only the slow, steady breath of life persevering against odds. In this silent vigil, human and animal shared an unspoken bond, a fragile trust born from respect and gentle care. The night pressed on, unyielding and vast, but within its depths a flicker of possibility remained alive. As hours passed, Anil's vigilance never wavered. He adjusted his position, keeping alert to any sign of change, while maintaining calm to avoid disturbing the fragile balance. The elephant's steady, if shallow breathing was the thread anchoring the night's hope. Anil understood the weight of this moment, the fine line between survival and loss resting on fragile signs and quiet endurance. Each breath, each subtle twitch, was a reminder of the life still present, a life that depended on his watchful care. The risks remained real and urgent, but so too did the quiet determination to see this night through, to stand guard with patience and compassion. The clearing held its breath beneath the canopy. The stars scattered overhead a silent witness to the vigil below. The elephant, immense yet vulnerable, rested at the edge of life and loss, while Anil, steady and calm, offered the gift of presence. There was no rush, no desperate action, only the patient unfolding of time, measured in shared breaths and silent hope. The night's long watch was both a test and a testament, a quiet act of compassion in the vast, untamed world. And as the hours slipped slowly onward, the fragile connection between man and elephant held strong, a quiet promise that life, even in its most vulnerable moments, could still endure. The first faint light of dawn began to edge its way over the horizon, casting a pale glow across the quiet clearing where the elephant lay. The night had been long and heavy, filled with stillness and careful watchfulness, but now subtle shifts hinted at a fragile renewal. Anil remained close, his presence a steady, silent thread, woven through the fragile fabric of life unfolding before him. The elephant's chest rose and fell in an uneven rhythm, slower and more labored than before, yet unmistakably alive. The faint fluttering of its eyelids was the first real sign that life stirred beneath the exhaustion, a fragile beacon of hope amid the lingering shadows of uncertainty. Anil's eyes traced every detail, the shallow breaths, the tentative movements of a trunk barely lifting, and the slow, careful twitch of an ear as if sensing the new day's arrival. The elephant's skin, mottled with dust and dew, caught the soft morning light, revealing the contours of a body worn yet resilient. Despite the profound fatigue that weighed heavily, there was a subtle pulse of energy returning, a faint strengthening beneath the stillness. The clearing itself seemed to hold its breath, the surrounding trees silent witnesses to this quiet, life-affirming moment. Small insects stirred in the undergrowth, and distant birds began their morning chorus, filling the air with tentative notes that seemed to echo the slow awakening of the elephant. Its trunk moved with greater intent, reaching out cautiously toward a cluster of fresh leaves Anil had placed nearby the night before, a gentle invitation to nourishment. Though the effort was minimal, the gesture marked a turning point. The creature was not yet ready to abandon the stillness, but was beginning to acknowledge the world around it. Anil spoke softly, voice barely above a whisper. "You're almost there." The words a quiet bridge between human and beast, an acknowledgement of the struggle and the tenuous thread of survival. His tone carried no pressure, only gentle encouragement, a respectful offer of companionship in a moment that balanced precariously between recovery and relapse. The elephant's slow, deliberate blinks grew more frequent, and its gaze, once heavy and unfocused, started to hold a flicker of awareness. Yet the weight of fatigue remained evident, limbs trembling slightly when it attempted to shift, the eyes reflecting both confusion and a faint trust. It was clear the elephant's strength was still fragile, and every movement was a careful negotiation with pain and exhaustion. The surrounding environment carried the slow rhythm of morning, cool mist rising from damp earth, the soft rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze, and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot from unseen animals beginning their daily routines. The air was fresh, imbued with the subtle sense of wet soil and flowering plants, an understated vitality that contrasted with the heavy stillness of the elephant's condition. Anil's steady presence became a quiet anchor in this evolving scene. He maintained a careful distance, balancing vigilance with respect for the elephant's need for space and calm. His hands rested calmly on his knees as he observed, every muscle relaxed but alert, prepared to intervene if the fragile balance shifted toward danger. As the morning progressed, the elephant's trunk managed a slow sweep toward the water bowl, dipping its tip into the cool liquid. The sip was shallow and tentative but vital, a sign the creature was beginning to respond to basic needs again. Anil's heart steadied at this small victory, though he remained acutely aware that survival still hinged on many factors. The elephant's ability to drink enough to stay hydrated, the gradual return of strength to stand and move, and the avoidance of predators drawn to weakness. Each breath taken, each slow movement, carried the weight of life's delicate persistence. The risks were real and ever-present, yet the signs of life stirring offered a slender hope that recovery was possible. The elephant's eyes shifted focus, scanning the clearing with slow, deliberate blinks, as if reacquainting itself with the world after a long absence. There was no rush, no sudden motion, only the patient return of consciousness, measured in moments and subtle gestures. Anil's voice remained low and steady, a soft presence rather than a command. "It's okay, girl." The elephant responded with a slight lift of its trunk, the tip brushing lightly against the earth as if acknowledging the quiet reassurance. The mutual trust that had begun to form was fragile but real, built on the shared experience of vulnerability and calm care. Throughout the early hours, the elephant's movements remained hesitant yet purposeful. It attempted a slow, shaky shift of its massive legs, a delicate balancing act between strength and weakness. The ears flicked occasionally, responding to distant sounds, a flock of birds taking flight, the murmur of a nearby stream, and the soft footsteps of nocturnal animals retreating. These subtle interactions with the environment marked a gradual re-engagement with life's rhythms, a tentative step back from the brink. Anil watched closely, ready to respond if the fragile progress faltered, but hopeful that the elephant's own resilience would carry it through. The clearing's quiet morning light revealed the elephant's worn skin, creased and dusted with the earth of the previous night's struggle. The creature's slow recovery was a testament to the strength found even in moments of profound weakness. Anil's presence, steady and unobtrusive, offered a lifeline not through force but through patient witness, a reminder that survival often depends on small, incremental steps and the power of silent companionship. The elephant's slow opening of its eyes, its careful exploration of the surrounding world, and its faint acceptance of nourishment all signaled a turning point, fragile yet real, in the ongoing story of life against adversity. By mid-morning, the elephant was still resting, but showing unmistakable signs of renewed vitality. Its breathing was steadier, limbs less rigid, and its gaze held a growing clarity. The risks remained pressing. If the elephant failed to regain enough strength soon, dehydration, exhaustion, and predation could prove fatal. But for now, the signs of life stirring were enough to carry hope. Anil remained vigilant, his presence a quiet promise that the fragile bond between human and animal would endure through whatever challenges lay ahead. This early awakening was more than a physical shift. It was a profound moment of connection and possibility, a testament to the resilience found in the wild's most vulnerable moments. The late afternoon air carried a subtle shift, the warm light fading slowly as shadows lengthened beneath the dense canopy at Kaziranga's edge. The elephant, still weak but showing flickers of movement and awareness, lay low to the ground. Anil's senses sharpened. The weight of responsibility pressed quietly but firmly on his shoulders. The elephant's fragile state was an open invitation to danger. Predators, keenly attuned to scent and sound, were already circling, invisible yet ominously near. The threat was immediate. If the elephant were left unguarded, exhaustion and injury could swiftly become death by attack. Anil's quiet vigilance became a barrier, a human presence calibrated to protect without intrusion. He moved deliberately, every step slow and measured to avoid startling the elephant or drawing unnecessary attention. His gaze scanned the dense undergrowth, listening for the faintest rustle, the almost imperceptible crack of a twig under paw or claw. The environment held its own tension. A distant branch creaked as a breeze whispered through leaves, and a low call echoed from deep in the forest, the sounds layered and alive with unseen movement. Anil's calm breathing matched the rhythms of the forest, steady and restrained, a steady heartbeat in the fragile stillness. The elephant's slow breathing mingled with these sounds, shallow but present, an echo of life sustained against the gathering darkness. The elephant's ears flicked intermittently, and its trunk shifted with small, cautious movements, signaling unease and alertness to the lurking threat. It was a delicate dance between vulnerability and instinct. This great creature, so powerful in health now diminished, relied on every remaining ounce of awareness to survive. Its eyes, still heavy with fatigue, reflected flickers of fear and confusion, eyes fixed on places unseen by human eyes. The weight of grief and loss hung over the animal's posture, yet beneath that shadow, a flicker of fight remained. Anil recognized the fragile balance. The elephant's struggle was not only physical, but deeply instinctual, a constant negotiation with the dangers that prowled unseen. As twilight deepened, the tension in the air thickened. Anil's hand rested lightly on a nearby branch, fingers loose but ready, a symbol of watchful patience rather than threat. His mind catalogued every detail, the scent in the air growing sharper with decay and sweat, the slight tremor in the elephant's breathing, and the distant howl of a jackal, a reminder that the predator's hunger was real and immediate. Every decision, every movement he made carried the weight of life or death for the elephant. The risks were stark and unyielding. If the elephant were left exposed, it might not survive the night. But any sudden action could provoke a dangerous reaction or frighten the fragile animal into exhausting itself further. The earth beneath them was cool and damp, carrying the scent of rain from days past and the rich decay of the forest floor. Small insects buzzed softly, a subtle soundtrack to the night's silent drama. Anil's presence was deliberate, a quiet shadow merging with the environment rather than dominating it. His eyes met the elephant's briefly. Slow, measured eye contact that spoke of calm assurance and steady protection. The elephant's trunk brushed faintly against the earth, a gesture tinged with both vulnerability and trust. "It's okay, girl," Anil murmured softly, his voice low and even, offering a fragile comfort in a world fraught with peril. The darkness deepened, swallowing the edges of the clearing, while the jungle's sounds grew sharper, rustling leaves, distant calls, and the heavy footfall of unseen creatures. Predators stalked, silent and patient, drawn by the scent of weakness and the promise of easy prey. Yet, within this tension, Anil's watchful resolve formed an invisible shield, a quiet barrier between danger and survival. His steady presence was a vital lifeline, not just guarding against physical threats but maintaining a calm energy that the elephant seemed to sense. The fragile bond between man and beast grew in this shared vigil, an unspoken understanding born from mutual respect and quiet endurance. Throughout the night, Anil's vigilance never wavered. He shifted position slowly, ensuring his movements were gentle, careful not to startle or distress. His eyes never left the surrounding brush, alert to every subtle shift, every sound that might signal approaching danger. The elephant's breaths remained shallow but consistent, a testament to its fragile will to live. Despite the looming threat, the creature showed moments of tentative strength, a small lift of the trunk, a shift in position, and a slow blink. These gestures were small but vital victories in the fight against exhaustion and fear. The stakes were clear. If the elephant's strength failed, it would become vulnerable to the night's dangers. Anil's role was to buy time, to shield this fragile life with steady calm. As the hours passed, the jungle's nocturnal rhythm enveloped them, the low murmur of distant animals and the soft rustle of leaves in the night breeze. The tension remained palpable but tempered by Anil's presence, his quiet vigilance a steadying force. The elephant, though still weak and wary, had not succumbed. This delicate balance between threat and protection held, a testament to patience and respect in the wild's raw reality. Anil knew the night was far from over, and every moment counted. The risks remained high, the dangers ever present. But his unwavering resolve offered the elephant a fragile hope, survival through quiet strength and watchful care. As the horizon softened with the first pale hues of dawn, a quiet stillness settled over the clearing where the elephant had spent the long, fragile night. The air was cool, carrying a faint mist that clung to the tall grasses and twisted branches, whispering of new beginnings even in the face of uncertainty. Anil remained close by, his eyes scanning the slowly brightening landscape, his breath steady and deliberate as he observed the subtle shift in the elephant's condition. She was no longer lying down, no longer resigned to stillness. She stood, though unsteadily, every movement measured and cautious. The weight of exhaustion still pulled at her limbs, her legs trembling slightly beneath the heavy, sagging frame. But the fact that she was upright marked a fragile victory. Life persisted in the delicate thread between weakness and strength. The elephant's breath came in slow, uneven gusts, visible in the cool morning air, each exhale a soft fog that vanished quickly into the awakening day. Her trunk lifted hesitantly, sweeping over the earth and gathering a tentative handful of leaves. The act was simple, almost automatic, but carried profound significance, an instinct to nourish, a sign that the spark of survival still burned within. Anil watched carefully, noting the gentle movements of her ears, flickering like pale flags in the cool breeze, alert to the sounds of the forest but also wary, still shadowed by the memory of pain and loss. The elephant's eyes, glassy but focused, flicked toward the rising sun, as if sensing the slow unfolding of a new day's promise. Around them, the environment began its quiet chorus. Birdsong wove through the air, a delicate symphony of chirps and calls that layered above the soft rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of a river awakening to morning. The forest seemed to hold its breath, every creature adjusting to the gentle rhythm of dawn. The soft earth beneath the elephant's feet, damp from overnight dew, gave subtle resistance as she shifted her weight, grounding her tentative steps in the waking world. Each careful movement was a balance, too sudden or too heavy, and the fragile energy might collapse, but too still, and she would risk remaining trapped in weakness. The fragile line between survival and surrender was as visible as the mist curling around the trees. Anil's presence remained unobtrusive yet steadfast, a quiet support beneath the elephant's faltering strength. He approached slowly, mindful not to startle her, and placed fresh water and a small pile of soft leaves just within reach. His movements were slow and respectful, offering nourishment and comfort without pressure. The elephant's trunk inched forward, testing the water, her gentle sips carrying a whisper of hope. Anil's calm breath mingled with the rising warmth of morning, and as he whispered, "You're almost there," it was a phrase filled not with certainty but with patient encouragement. The elephant responded with a slow blink, a subtle gesture of acknowledgement that spoke volumes of trust born from quiet companionship. Yet beneath these hopeful moments, the stakes remained stark. The night had taken much. The elephant's body bore the marks of struggle. Her muscles were weak, and her movements were limited. If she faltered now, if exhaustion overtook her fragile will, the risk of collapse and the renewed threat from predators loomed large. Anil's steady vigilance was vital, a buffer between life and death. The fragile balance of survival hinged on every breath, every cautious step forward. As the sun's rays edged higher, scattering the mist and warming the earth, the elephant's shadow stretched long and wavering, a living testament to resilience on the edge. The air shifted subtly as a distant call echoed through the trees, an echo of the wild's enduring presence, a reminder of the vast world beyond this small clearing. The elephant's ears twitched, alert but calm, and she lifted her trunk once more, this time reaching toward a nearby branch heavy with fresh leaves. The act was slow and deliberate, each movement a careful negotiation between need and limitation. She pulled the leaves toward her mouth, chewing softly, the faint sound mingling with the forest's gentle morning chorus. This quiet act of feeding was a milestone, signaling the body's slow acceptance of strength and nourishment. The fragile dance of recovery was underway. Anil's gaze softened as he observed the elephant's efforts. Each small step was a story of survival, a quiet victory carved out of pain and uncertainty. The bond between man and beast had deepened in the stillness of the night, a shared vigil marked by patience and respect. Now, as dawn breathed gently over the land, the elephant stood as a symbol of endurance. Shaky, vulnerable, yet undeniably alive. The forest around them seemed to lean in, holding space for this fragile renewal. The promise that life, even when diminished, found a way to persist. The morning light lengthened, warming the clearing and igniting colors long hidden by shadow. The elephant's legs found steadier ground, Her breaths grew less labored, and the tension in her frame eased imperceptibly. Anil remained close, offering presence without pressure, knowing that survival was a slow, careful journey, not a sudden triumph. The risks remained, but so did the will to live, woven quietly into each cautious motion. The elephant's eyes met Anil's once more, an exchange of calm understanding in the soft light of dawn. As the sun climbed higher, the forest stirred fully awake around them, the gentle rustling of leaves and distant bird calls filling the air. The fragile balance between survival and weakness held firm, a testament to resilience nurtured in the quiet hours of night and the gentle breath of morning. The elephant took another slow step forward, a tentative movement that carried the weight of hope and the promise of continuing life. The world was waking, and with it, a story of endurance quietly unfolded, unseen by many, yet profound in its stillness. As dawn's light softened the shadows beneath the towering trees, Anil approached the elephant with careful steps, his movements deliberate and slow. The night had been long and fraught with uncertainty, but now, in the gentle quiet of morning, a fragile connection began to take shape. The elephant, still weak and cautious, remained near the spot where she had lain through the night, her breath steady but shallow, eyes flickering with a mixture of fatigue and wariness. Anil knelt a respectful distance away, mindful of the fragile line between comfort and intrusion. He placed a small pile of fresh, tender leaves on the soft earth, and nearby, a shallow bowl of water glistened in the pale light. The act was simple, yet laden with meaning. A silent offer of care, a gesture of patience extended across the divide between species. The elephant's trunk stirred gently, slow and tentative, reaching toward the leaves with trembling curiosity. Each movement was measured, as if testing the safety of this new presence. Her ears, large and soft, flicked at the slightest sounds, the faint rustling of leaves, the distant call of birds waking to the morning chorus. Her eyes, heavy but attentive, met Anil's steady gaze, searching for any sign of threat or reassurance. There was no haste, no desperation, only the delicate balance of trust forming in small gestures, a slow breath, a subtle nod of the head, and the careful exploration of nourishment offered without demand. The elephant lowered her trunk and gathered a few leaves, chewing softly, a quiet affirmation that life persisted despite the lingering shadows of the night before. Anil remained still, his breathing calm and even, aware that the elephant's survival hinged on this fragile trust. His presence was a gentle shield against the dangers that had prowled near during the darkness, the unseen predators drawn by scent, waiting for weakness to reveal itself. The stakes could not be overstated. If the elephant rejected this lifeline, or if exhaustion claimed her strength, the night's threats would return, and the fragile thread holding her to life would fray. Yet, in these quiet moments, hope stirred like the morning breeze, subtle but insistent. The slow, deliberate acceptance of water and leaves was a sign that the elephant's instinct for survival endured, even in the face of profound vulnerability. The environment around them stirred with the slow rhythms of dawn. Dew clung to blades of grass, sparkling like tiny jewels, and the air was cool with the promise of a new day. Birdsong wove through the branches, a gentle tapestry of sound that filled the forest with life's persistence. The elephant's skin, thick and textured, bore the marks of her ordeal, scratches, dried mud, and patches of exhaustion. But beneath the surface there was a resilience that neither time nor hardship could erase. She shifted her weight slightly, testing her limbs, and Anil observed with a quiet sense of relief. Every subtle movement was a victory carved from the depths of uncertainty. As the elephant drank from the bowl, her trunk curled gently around the water's edge, drawing in the liquid with slow, methodical sips. The moisture seemed to revive more than just her body. It nurtured a growing bond of quiet companionship between her and the man who had stayed through the night, offering nothing but calm presence and gentle care. Anil's voice broke the silence, soft and reassuring. "It's okay, girl." The words were sparse, carrying no demands, only the hope that echoed in the soft morning light. The elephant responded with a slow blink, a subtle signal of trust that underscored the delicate connection forming in this shared space. The tension in the clearing eased just enough for the fragile life to hold on. The risks remained as real as ever. Predators still lurked in the shadows beyond the trees, and the elephant's strength was not yet restored. Every breath, every cautious movement, was a negotiation with the precarious edge of survival. Anil knew that his role was to remain patient, to offer support without pressure, allowing the elephant to reclaim her strength on her own terms. This was not a rescue of sudden triumph, but a quiet unfolding of resilience, a slow renewal of trust between human and wild. Around them, the forest breathed with the soft sounds of dawn, leaves stirring in a gentle breeze, the distant call of a bird echoing through the trees, and the faint rustle of small creatures awakening. The elephant's large eyes scanned the surroundings, alert but less tense than before. She shifted again, moving her trunk toward the leaves with more confidence, chewing thoughtfully as if savoring not just the taste, but the very act of nourishment. This slow acceptance of care was a turning point, a subtle sign that life's fragile thread remained unbroken. Anil watched closely, his heart steady but hopeful. He understood the enormity of the moment, the quiet power in the unspoken trust forming between them. The elephant was still weak, still vulnerable, but she had taken the first steps toward recovery, steps marked not by haste or force, but by respect and patience. The connection that had grown overnight had blossomed in the soft light of morning, a testament to the delicate balance of survival in the wild. As the sun climbed higher, casting gentle warmth over the clearing, the elephant remained close to the water and leaves, drawing strength in small, deliberate measures. Anil's steady presence provided a quiet reassurance, a protective calm that surrounded her like a gentle shield. The risk of collapse lingered, but so did the fragile promise of healing. In this moment, the wild and the human met in a silent accord, bound by patience, respect, and the shared will to endure. The day was just beginning, and with it came the slow, quiet hope of renewal. The elephant's tentative trust and Anil's unwavering calm formed a fragile bridge, one that might carry her safely back from the brink. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, bearing witness to this fragile bond, this quiet connection that spoke of survival without words, of care without demands. In the soft glow of morning, life pressed gently forward, step by cautious step. The morning sun had fully risen now, spilling gentle warmth over the earth and softening the edges of night's lingering shadows. The air was still cool, carrying a faint scent of wet earth and fresh leaves, the forest waking gradually to another day. The elephant stirred beside Anil, her breathing steady but shallow, each exhale a quiet whisper of resilience. Slowly, almost hesitantly, she lifted her massive head, eyes fluttering open to meet the calm, watchful gaze of the ranger who had stayed by her side through the long hours of darkness. There was a fragile strength in those eyes, tired yet alert, a flicker of life that had held on despite the danger that had pressed close. Anil's heart held a quiet hope, knowing this fragile spark was the beginning of something vital: recovery. The elephant shifted her weight slightly, the movement cautious and unsteady. Her legs trembled beneath her enormous frame as she tested the strength in muscles long still. With a careful lift of her trunk, she touched the ground, exploring the familiar terrain as if reacquainting herself with the world beyond the safety of stillness. The rustle of dry leaves and the soft crunch of earth beneath her feet were small but powerful sounds, evidence of life stirring after the long night. Anil stayed close, speaking in a low, gentle tone. "You're almost there." His voice was soft, meant not to startle but to offer quiet encouragement, a thread of calm woven between two beings bound by circumstance. The risk remained high. The elephant's movements were tentative, her balance unsure, and every step held the weight of vulnerability. Predators lurked beyond the tree line, drawn by scent and silence, waiting for a sign of weakness. If she faltered now, the fragile thread of survival might snap. Anil's presence was a shield, steady and unyielding, offering protection not through force but through calm vigilance. He moved with deliberate slowness, mindful that even the slightest sudden motion could unsettle the delicate process of healing underway. The elephant's large ears flicked at distant sounds, bird calls, the rustle of small animals, reminding her of the life around, the world she must rejoin. Her trunk moved with increasing confidence, sweeping gently over the grass and broken twigs, gathering a few tender shoots to eat. The simple act of feeding was itself an achievement, a sign that her body was beginning to respond, that the will to live was backed by strength returning. Anil watched closely as the elephant took another tentative step forward, then another, the slow rhythm of movement growing steadier with each effort. The ground beneath her feet was uneven, littered with leaves and branches, but she adapted, the heavy steps finding purchase despite the fragility beneath. This was not a sudden recovery, but a cautious emergence, the slow reclaiming of a place in the wild. Around them, the forest stirred in quiet harmony. Soft rays of sunlight filtered through the canopy, dappling the earth in golden pools. The distant call of a hornbill echoed through the trees, mingling with the faint hum of insects waking from the cool night. The elephant's skin, marked with faint scars and patches of dried mud, glistened faintly with morning dew. Her breath, though still shallow, was more rhythmic now, a steady drumbeat that filled the space between stillness and motion. Each movement was a negotiation between exhaustion and hope, survival and the ever-present danger that lay in wait. Anil remained close but silent, his eyes never leaving the elephant's slow, deliberate movements. His hands rested lightly on a nearby tree trunk, grounding himself in the moment, ready to respond but careful not to impose. The bond that had begun in the quiet hours of night deepened now in this fragile dance of recovery. Trust was measured in small gestures, the elephant's acceptance of his presence, the softening of her gaze, and the faint lift of her trunk toward him as if seeking reassurance. In this space between fear and healing, a silent understanding took root, fragile but real. The stakes could not be overstated. If she pushed too hard, exhaustion might claim her. If she hesitated too long, the risk of predators would grow. Each step was both victory and vulnerability. Anil's calm watchfulness was a quiet lifeline, a reminder that she was not alone in this moment of transition. The elephant's slow steps forward were more than just physical movements. They were a testament to the raw will to live that defines the wild, the fragile pulse of life pressed against the ever-present edge of danger. As the morning advanced, the elephant moved farther from the place where she had lain still, her gait gaining steadiness though her strength remained guarded. The earth beneath her feet held the marks of her slow passage, soft impressions in the soil, a whispered trace of survival. Anil followed at a respectful distance, his eyes filled with a mixture of relief and cautious hope. This turning point was not an end, but a beginning, the first steps forward after a long night of stillness, the delicate emergence of life from the brink. The forest around them seemed to exhale softly, the wind stirring the leaves and carrying the faint scent of blossoms. The elephant paused once, turning her head back toward the shadows she had left behind. Her eyes met Anil's one last time. A quiet acknowledgement shared between two beings bound by a fragile moment of trust. Then, with steady resolve, she continued on, each step a quiet declaration of survival and the slow return to the wild. The first light of dawn stretched slowly across the landscape, painting the horizon with soft gold and pale pink hues. The air was cool, still heavy with the night's lingering shadows, and the quiet of the forest held a gentle tension, as if waiting for something unseen to unfold. The elephant, weary and fragile, lay resting beneath the shelter of tall trees, her breath shallow but steady, her body pressed low to the earth that had been both refuge and burden through the long night. Anil remained close, his presence a calm and steady rhythm beside her, a watchful guardian amid the awakening world. The stakes remained clear. Life hung delicately in balance, and every moment held the fragile possibility of both loss and renewal. Slowly, subtle changes began to ripple through the elephant's form. Her breaths deepened, the rise and fall of her sides growing more pronounced as the muscles around her shifted with new effort. The tension in her body spoke of a profound struggle, an internal movement that was at once ancient and intimate. Anil's eyes never left her, attuned to the quiet signs, soft moans, the gentle trembling of her limbs, and the flicker of her dark eyes opening briefly to meet the dawn. The world around them stirred with soft bird calls and the rustling of leaves, but here, in this small clearing, time seemed to stretch and pause in reverence. A sudden motion rippled through the elephant's body, slow but unmistakable, as if the earth itself moved within her. The muscles tensed, then relaxed, and a low, almost imperceptible sound escaped her lips, a call that spoke of pain, of endurance, of something immense waiting to come forth. Anil leaned closer, heart steady but breath caught in the quiet hope swelling within him. He offered a gentle word, barely more than a whisper. "You're almost there." His voice carried no demand, only the soft encouragement born of respect and care. Around them, the forest held its breath. The scent of damp earth and fresh foliage mingled with the raw, ancient scent of life entering the world. The elephant's trunk moved slowly, brushing tenderly over the ground, and then curling protectively close to her body. Her eyes reflected a mixture of exhaustion and fierce determination. The wild strength that had carried her through injury, fear, and uncertainty was now focused on this one moment, the threshold between survival and a new beginning. Minutes passed like hours as the elephant strained with quiet persistence. The light deepened, shafts of sun breaking through the canopy to cast warm pools across her rugged skin. The sounds of the forest resumed their gentle chorus, birds singing, insects stirring, but beneath these ordinary voices lay the extraordinary, the miracle of birth unfolding in silence. Anil stayed near, his careful attention unwavering, knowing the risk was immense. If anything went wrong now, the delicate balance of life could tip irrevocably. Yet the elephant's body, despite its weariness, moved with a slow, steady power toward the arrival of new life. Then, softly and suddenly, the moment arrived. The elephant's trunk twitched with a tender urgency, and from beneath her a small, wet form emerged, fragile and trembling, yet alive. The calf's eyes blinked open to the world for the first time, wide and dark, reflecting the golden morning light. It let out a faint, uncertain call, a fragile cry that echoed softly through the trees. The mother responded immediately, curling her trunk around the calf with a gentle but firm touch, drawing it close in a silent, unspoken vow of protection and love. Anil watched, breath steady but heart full. As the two settled into a new rhythm, the tender exchange of warmth, scent, and connection that bound mother and child in the wild. The forest around them seemed to exhale, the weight of uncertainty lifting with the miracle of new life. The morning sun spilled over the horizon, bathing the scene in a gentle glow that spoke of hope and renewal amid the long struggle. Here, in this quiet clearing, beneath the vast sky, life had found a way. The elephant's eyes met Anil's once more, calm now, steady, carrying the ancient wisdom of survival and the fragile joy of beginning again. The calf nestled close, its small body rising and falling with each breath, a living testament to the resilience woven through the wilderness. The world beyond held its dangers still, but in this moment the promise of tomorrow was bright and unshakable. The miracle of birth, born through pain and patience, had arrived with the first light of day. Anil stepped back slowly, giving space to the mother and her calf, the quiet bond between them untouched by human hands. As the sunlight deepened, the soft sounds of the forest wove around the new family, a distant bird call, the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze, and the faint murmur of life moving forward. The day had begun, carrying with it the gentle weight of hope renewed and the enduring cycle of life continuing beneath the endless sky.